So good morning, I'm Nicola Barrett, Chief Corporate Learning Officer at Emory Executive Education at Goizueta Business School, and thank you for joining us this morning. For those that just joined, unfortunately, Steve Savage, who we had scheduled to be on Business Over Breakfast, is ill. We found that out yesterday, and Jamie graciously agreed to step in as our presenter. So have you ever imagined a version of yourself? I do this constantly, Jamie, that's smarter, funnier, happier, more successful? Yes, to all of those. So we all have our aspirational self, a vision of who we could be at our very best. The challenge, however, lies between the gap between our current selves here and this ideal version that we have in our heads. So today I'm pleased to be joined by Jamie Turner, who's an adjunct professor at Goizueta Business School, who's known to many of you Bob participants, to share insights and a practical roadmap outlining how to get the best from yourself and help you become the person you aspire to be. I think this is one for people to watch in person and then watch the video, which will be out next week. Jamie teaches in both the MBA and undergraduate programs at Goizueta and also sometimes in our executive education programs, and is an internationally recognized author, workshop leader, and CNN contributor. In fact, for those of you who are interested, he's going to be on CNN International this Friday at 6 p.m. I'm assuming that's Eastern time. And again at Sunday at 11 p.m. So try and check him out. Jamie travels the globe helping organizations and their people learn how to communicate better, how to manage teams better, and how to be more productive. And we'll take the usual format for Business Over Breakfast, where Jamie will talk for 30 to 35 minutes. We'll take questions and Q&A at the end. So please put them into the chat and also into the Q&A. Before I hand over to Jamie, I do want to share a few other things that we have coming up. So if you're interested in improving how you lead and manage the business, staying on the forefront of technology, understanding how AI and data analytics is shaping your business and your industry, we do have some brand new asynchronous courses on digital disruption and AI and leveraging analytics. We also have an in-person AI for business coming up as well. So check out those if you want to be on the forefront of technology and its impact on business. And then also just in terms of leading and managing the business, think about our managerial leadership program that is starting at the end of March or March 25th. There's also some freebies that we have coming up. One freebie actually for those of you in Atlanta, and if you were on the Business Over Breakfast where Dorotea Bozzacalona Volpe spoke, she is doing a in-person at Goizueta Business School session or workshop on LinkedIn from basics to beyond. So if you'd like to come and join us for that 2-hour session, it's going to be on March 12th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Bring your laptop because it's a workshop. She's not just going to talk at us. We're going to actually do some work. That's going to be on leveraging LinkedIn. Also, for Bob participants, you will receive an invitation, I think over the next several days, if you're interested in the Executive Women of Goizueta conference that's coming up. We've got agreement that anybody who is a Bob participant can join that conference at the alumni discount. So another benefit for being part of this community. That's way more from me than you all need. So I'm going to hand over to Jamie. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nicola. It looks like we've got a lot of folks who've seen me before. Wonderful to see you. And I appreciate all the shout outs. Dr. G was in there, Pam, Wendy, everybody and Madonna, thank you for your kind words there. Go ahead and open up the chat feature. I'll be monitoring that as well as the Q&A feature. But go ahead and type in there where you're tuning in from. Would love to see where everybody's tuning in from. We'll have a little Jeopardy music while people are typing that in. Roswell, great. Decatur, Atlanta, Miami, excellent. What a beautiful place. Alpharetta, Greenville, South Carolina, good, excellent. I spent a lot of time up in Greenville. What a great job they've done with Greenville. Western North Carolina, Birmingham, terrific. Naples, Florida, terrific. Toronto, Ken. So far, Ken wins the I'm from the farthest place out. So let's see if we've got anybody else from further than Los Angeles. Possibly. Now that Toronto is and Canada is a state in the United States, that's a joke. That's a total joke. We would consider it part of the family, but we always consider the Canadians and Canada part of the family. Why not start off with something a little controversial, right? Hey, let's keep going here. Buckhead, Panama City, Panama. Oh, Jamark, you win so far the farthest away, which is awesome. New York City. Madonna, where are you in New York City? What part of New York City? We're almost done here. Wow, we've got a lot of folks from all over the globe, which is awesome. Mexico, terrific. Harlem, New York, wonderful. Marie, France, terrific. Good to see everybody. We're going to have a lot of fun today. And part of the reason that I enjoy doing this is I go around the globe helping others basically get the best version of themselves possible. In fact, I'm going to do the overhead camera here for a second and just show you something. You see the overhead screen there. Here's what we're talking about doing today. And Nicola had mentioned this. All of us, this is you over here, by the way. That you may not look exactly like that, but you might look a little bit like that. But the bottom line is all of us have something called an aspiration line. The aspiration line is this version of ourselves up here that we know we can achieve if we just had the roadmap to get there. The problem is we live in the real world down here. Well, I'm going to show you some tips and techniques that you can use today to reach your aspiration line. That is how to get the best version of yourself out there, whether it is your personal life or your professional life. We'll talk about a lot of things on that front designed to help you do exactly that. And the things that we'll do are designed to help you think about how you think about the world around you. One of the key things we'll talk about a little bit is two things: self-awareness as well as changing your mindset, because if the way you filter the world around you improves the way you can move into the world and improve your career. First thing I want everybody to do, go ahead and take your dominant hand right now. Just take whatever hand you write with, left or right, and I want you to draw the letter Q on your forehead. And there's a reason we're doing this. So go ahead and draw the Q on your forehead right now. Terrific. Awesome. Everybody's done that so far. Terrific. Wonderful. Now you've drawn the letter Q on your forehead. The tail of the Q either went down over your left eye or went down over your right eye. And believe it or not, there was a study done by Dr. Richard Weissman, and he found out that where you draw the letter Q and how you draw it can tell you a little bit about yourself. Now, I'm going to tell you what this means in a second, but the reason we do this is because the starting point for becoming the person that you know you can become is self-awareness. Who am I today so that I can actually reach that aspiration line that Jamie was talking to me about earlier? So you've drawn the letter Q over and the tail has gone over the left eye or the right eye. Let's take a look at the slides and we'll find out what that letter Q actually means with the way you've drawn it. Again, we're talking about getting the best from yourself today. If you drew the letter Q so that you can read it, so that would mean that you drew the Q where the tail goes over your right eye. That means you can read it. It actually tells you a little bit about yourself. And let's find out what it tells you about yourself. If you drew the letter Q so the tail went over your right eye and you can read it, it means you're self-focused. Now that's not as bad as it may sound. It doesn't mean you're selfish. It just means that you are kind of self-focused and you're very confident about who you are. It says that you are the same person person in different situations, that you're guided by your own values rather than the needs of others, that you pride yourself in being straight with people, and that you're also not very good at lying, but you're good at detecting lies in others. So this is a research that was done by Dr. Richard Weissman, and it tells you a little bit about who you are. Now, a lot of you are saying, hey, what if I drew the cue so that other people can read it? What does that tell me about myself? Well, it means that you're other focused, that you're more concerned about how other people see you, that you're happier being the focus of other people's attention, and can adapt your behavior to suit the situation in which you find yourself. And you're probably skilled at influencing the way other people see you. And then finally, you may be good at lying, but you're not very good at detecting lies in others. So in the chat feature, if you don't mind, put whether or not you went over the left eye or the right eye, and let's talk about that for a second, just to kind of get a read on where people are on all of that. So this is terrific, wonderful, terrific. We're seeing stuff in there right now, but it looks like, oh look, a lot of people drew it over their right eye. That's fascinating. Probably 67%, 60 or 70% drew it over their right eye. Well, that's kind of interesting because that tells you a little bit about yourself. Remember, the goal here is to understand yourself and have self-awareness. The starting point for a successful career and a successful life is self-awareness. And the more we kind of understand who we are, the better off we're going to be. Now, remember, it's important to understand who you are. It's also important to understand who the other people you're working with are. So it's not just about sitting around and understanding yourself. It's also trying to get inside the mind of the people you're working with. In fact, I have a great story of a friend of mine who was being interviewed for a job at Accenture, and the interviewer at Accenture understood that their job was to understand my friend who was being interviewed. And my friend was asked a question, and the question at Accenture was, hey, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? And my friend thought, you know, I can give the standard answer that's like, oh, I want to help change Accenture, or I want to grow this office, or I want your job, or all those normal things that we say. And my friend said, you know what, I'm just going to be honest and tell him the truth. And so the guy says, hey, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? And my friend said, you know what, I want to be retired on the island of Majorca. And he was just honest about it. Well, here's the great thing about the person interviewing him. The person interviewing him said, great, let's make that happen. Now, what does that tell us about the mindset of the person doing the interviewing? They understood that if I'm going to get the best from the people that I hire, I have to get inside their mind and understand what motivates them and what drives them. And I'm talking to somebody who, it might only be here for 5 years, but we can actually work with them for 5 years because they're talented and good and smart and all the things that you're looking for at Accenture. But they went in and said, you know what, let me get inside your mind, understand who you are, and then make your goals match our goals so that we can have a win-win scenario. So key point I'm driving on all of this is, hey, it's important to understand who you are as a human being, which is why we did the draw the cue over the left eye or the right eye. And that gives you a sense of, are you self-focused or other-focused? There's no right or wrong answer to that. It just is what it is. And then you also have to go, well, what are the people that I'm working with all about? Let me get inside their mind and understand what motivates them so that when I work with them, I can drive things their way and help them get the things that they want to do in order to accomplish the goals in their life. One final point, and then we'll get back to the slides. I do a lot of consulting and a lot of workshops around the globe, and I go in and people talk to me and they say, hey, how can we get the best from our employees? And I point out something that is a critical thing, which is when you give an employee a raise, their morale improves for about 3 months, and then it goes back to the baseline. And this is based on research. Everything we're going to be talking about today is based on research, by the way. And so when you give somebody a raise, they're happy for about 3 months. They feel like, hey, I got the thing. And then they go back to their baseline. But when you train people, help people, give them a roadmap on how to improve their lives through things like we're doing here with Business Over Breakfast. Basically, what we've got going on is the ability to teach people how to be a better version of themselves in the future. That increases morale, productivity and engagement with your company for the long term, not the 3-month bump you get when you give somebody a raise, but the long term, because employees know what you're giving me today, I'm going to be using a decade from now, and that inspires them and does all of that. Thank you for the kind words there, Gary. Appreciate that. And then Bryant, thank you for that also. Let's see, we got a question here. What if you were trying to draw it so it was readable? We're going back to the Q question. So it was readable by others, but mistakenly drew it so that you could read it because you were bad at transposing letters. Okay, got that. So sometimes that letter Q thing, it gets mixed up in our brain, but that's okay. Not a problem there. Let's keep going. We're going to talk about the slides here and jump back over here. So the key point is the starting point for a successful career and a successful life is self-awareness, who you are. We're already asking questions, which is awesome. I really appreciate the questions going on in there, and that's wonderful. Now let's talk about how to open your mind up to new ideas. One of the things that I talk about in all of these conferences is, hey, you've got to have fluidity in your brain. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be constantly introducing new things into your life to keep that neuroplasticity that you keep hearing about, where you're open to new thoughts. Because what happens for us is we get into ruts. All of us in this series right now have gotten in ruts with things where we're confronted with new problems, but we're solving them with old solutions. When you get a new problem and solve it with an old solution, basically you have a law of diminishing returns where you start having less and less effectiveness with what you're doing. The solution to that is to keep your brain fluid and open to new ideas. So if you ever catch yourself saying, oh, it's not like it used to be, or oh, it was better in my youth, or stop that. Just don't do that. Cut yourself off and say, you know what? Maybe it was better in my youth, but I'm going to embrace what's going on today so that I can keep my mind fluid, keep my mind open to new ideas, new thoughts, new perspectives. So listen to new music, watch YouTube videos that young people are watching, do all that stuff to just keep the ideas flowing. And that'll improve your neuroplasticity, which will help you go into an environment, no matter what age you are, and be able to engage with people in the best way possible. So with that in mind, we're going to open your mind up to new ideas. In the chat feature, I want you to go in and answer the question. Now, some of you may have seen this before, but I want you to answer the question. Here's a true thing that happened in the United Kingdom. A truck was going along. They get stuck underneath this bridge. They got stuck, and in come all these people, these older people like me, my age, and they're going, well, we got to get a crane to lift the bridge off of the truck so that we can pull the truck out because the truck is stuck under there. They're looking at all these things and trying to figure out, how do we solve this problem? A young kid comes along who's 7 years old and walks up and gives a very simple solution. Now go ahead and type in the chat feature what the solution was. Awesome. Some of you have seen this before. Some of you are actually thinking about stuff for the first time and going, hey, guess what? We can solve this problem. You let the air out of the tires and suddenly it was solved. The reason I tell this story is that 7-year-old had fluidity and had neural pathways that didn't have these old ruts that they were in. And they said, hey, let's look at this from a fresh angle and we'll go ahead and do this. And they solved the problem. That's what I'm trying to teach you today, is how to have fluidity in your mindset so that you can become that person that you know you're capable of becoming. Let's keep going. I love the fact that we got the chat feature going here. Wonderful. That's terrific. We got a lot of great questions coming through, and all of that is happening, and we're getting answers both in the chat feature and in the Q&A. Either one, we're monitoring both of them. So here's something that I want you to take a look at on the screen. What I'm talking to you about today is based on a platform I developed called the Unspoken Rules of Leadership. They're basically the rules you don't get out of a textbook, the things that you learn through experience, or the things that kind of open your mind up to new things. And basically I realized once I started developing these, I did a matrix, and it was basically, there are topics that are one-to-one or one-to-many. There are also things that you tell yourself and things that you tell others. And when you start looking at what I'm about to show you, you understand, oh, guess what? We've got all sorts of things along this line that we can do. So on the one-to-one stuff, the stuff that you talk to yourself about, that's in the category of mindset. how you think about the world around you will change the way you engage with the world. And when you change the way you engage with the world, you change the outcomes in your life. Remember that statement. We'll come back to it in a minute. Then we get into mentoring. What are we going to talk about on ways that we can work better with the people who are reporting to us, the people who are we're working with? We will then get into management, which is, hey, I'm leading a team of 10 people, or I'm leading a company of 100 people or 1,000 people. It doesn't matter. What are the things that we can do in order to be a better management? And then finally, marketing, which is, hey, how can I have a better personal brand? What can I do to move out in there and have a better personal brand as I move through things? So, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a great thinker, says the most important moments in your life are dictated not by what you know, but by how you think. Here's one of the smartest people and most educated astronomers on the planet, and he's saying, hey, guess what? It's not what you know, it's how you think about the world around you that will change the way you engage with the world and ultimately change the outcomes in your life. So keep that in mind as we move forward on all of this. Here's a thought for you. The effective leaders work on their mindset first and their skill set second. So many times we walk in and we go, oh, I'm going to just learn the new software program. I'm going to read this book or whatever it is. The first step for improving your life as you move through things and getting the best from yourself is to change how you think about the world around you. We've already talked about that, but that's a key thing that I'll keep driving home. Change your thoughts. That will change your actions. When you change your actions, that will change the outcomes in your life. Gary has a question. Where does coaching fit into the model? Coaching fits into all of that model. The starting point, of course, is the mindset part of that model, that framework that we were talking about. But if you are a coach, then you can use all of the tips and techniques I'm going to talk to you about today. If you are being coached, then you will be able to, again, use these tips and techniques. So either way, it works out pretty well for you. Let's keep going on all of this. There is something called System 1 thinking versus System 2 thinking. System 1 thinking is our instinctive brain. It's basically the part of our brain that actually deals with the world around us in very instinctive ways, and those are called the 4 F's: fight, flight, food, and procreation. And the bottom line is it starts with basically the System 1 thinking, which happens in the amygdala. These are the impulses we have. Now, we control those impulses with our prefrontal cortex. That's where executive reasoning happens. So the people who are successful in life and in their careers manage their prefrontal cortex and kind of work with the prefrontal cortex in order to make things happen and in order to use it, because it's our planning. When we plant a seed today, will it sprout in 3 months so that I have food in 6 months? That's what happens up here in the front part of the brain. The instinctive part, which is the amygdala, is where we kind of have these impulses that go on. And all of that's important, because the more we manage this part of our brain, the better off we're going to be in our career and our lives. Now, the question you're having right now is probably, all right, how do I manage that part of my brain? I understand theoretically there's a prefrontal cortex and that's executive reasoning. How do I manage that? Well, here's how you do it. I'm about to get a little woo-woo with you, but this is all based on science. Years ago, I had my wife was having migraines. I won't get into the details, but migraines are caused sometimes by pumping too much blood into the brain, and so that causes pressure in the brain. And the doctor went in and said, hey, here's how we're going to manage this. What happens is the blood vessels open up, it pumps too much blood in your brain, and then they close off, and then that has a bad effect too. We're going to actually encourage you to keep the blood vessels in your body open at all times. And she was told this, and I was listening, and I thought, how am I going to manage my blood vessels? That's not something I'm going to be able to control. And the doctor said, I want you to go in and I want you to imagine your hands being warm, and just sit there for 10 minutes and imagine that your hands are warm. And my wife did that, and all of a sudden what happened was her hands got warm. And the doctor was saying, what we're doing is encouraging your body to open up the blood vessels so they stay open and they don't have this reaction where they open and then close and then open and close, which is what was causing the migraines. It was the first time in my life I realized that we have control control over our body in ways that we don't really understand or don't realize. And I went, oh, wow, you can open up the blood vessels in your body just by thinking about warming up your hands. Why do I tell you that? Well, you can also change how much blood flow goes to the prefrontal cortex by concentrating on that through meditation, sitting quietly, and just opening up those blood vessels. What happens when you do that? That gives the energy and blood flow to the executive reasoning part of your mind. And so all those impulses you have, like, hey, I'm angry at this person, I want to fight with them, go away because you're managing them through the prefrontal cortex. A lot of stuff that goes on all of this, all designed to help you, again, go back and reach that aspiration line that we were talking about earlier. Let's jump back to the slides and we'll keep going. So we saw that the amygdala is where the impulsive brain is. It's otherwise known as the reptilian brain. And then we have the prefrontal cortex. I went in and said, hey, doctor, I do talks about this and coach people around the globe about all of this stuff. Can you show me a scan of my brain? Because we've got the brain here of somebody. And unfortunately, this is what came back when they scanned my brain. So I'm not as smart as you might think, even though I'm pretty good at talking about things. So let's talk about a few other things as we go through this right here. When you move towards comfort, your world shrinks. When you move towards discomfort, your world expands. So think about that for a second and use this as a platform to build your future for yourself. When you move towards comfort, your world shrinks. When you move towards discomfort, your world expands. What do I mean by that? Well, my sister had a friend who went in and he basically was very successful, lived in a high-rise building, and she said, hey, let's go out to dinner. He says, great, I'll meet you at 4 p.m. And we'll go to the Mexican place. She says, we always go to the Mexican place. Why are we going to the Mexican place? And he said, because I like the restaurant. And I always order the same thing. And she said, okay, fine. Well, why are we meeting at 4 p.m. to go out to dinner? Well, because I get to the Mexican restaurant earlier and I get my favorite chair. I get my favorite seat and booth in the Mexican restaurant. And he goes in and she says, you know what? Your world is starting to shrink because you're making your life more and more comfortable, but you're actually shrinking your world. All of us thinking about this right now know that we improve our lives when we have mild discomfort. That can be learning something new. That can be learning how to meditate. That can be learning how to run a marathon. It can be all of these things that put us in mild discomfort. When we do that, our world actually expands. So if you have a feeling of mild discomfort, recognize that that's a good thing. When you start feeling like I'm getting comfortable in what I'm doing, recognize that that's not a good thing, that what you're doing is getting in that rut that we talked about earlier and embedding those neural pathways with the same old stuff, doing it the same old way, and that will not be an effective thing for you. So keep that in mind as we go through all of this and learn about stuff on all of this. So here's where we are. That is when you move towards comfort, your world shrinks. When you move towards discomfort, your world expands. I've already talked about this next slide previously. Thoughts, actions, and outcomes. And I'll just reiterate it here. When you change your thoughts, that changes your actions. When you change your actions, that changes the outcomes in your life. So the whole world revolves around changing the way you think about things and opening your mind to new ideas and moving into the world and seeing the world as a world of abundance instead of a world of scarcity. When you change that thought, it actually changes your actions and you start behaving in a slightly different way. The one thing that we can't control are the outcomes. We have to release ourselves of the outcomes. Why is that? Because there's too many variables out there. We can control our thoughts, we can control our actions. We have to let go of the outcomes, because when we let go of the outcomes, we're actually in a state of flow and we're like, okay, cool, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. That's okay, but I can control my thoughts and my actions, but I have to let go of the outcomes. And when I do that, I'm actually better able to kind of move through things and be in the state of flow that we talked about, which is critical to our success in the future. So remember that: thoughts, actions, and outcomes. So here's something I'm going to talk about, which is your first line of code. If we're talking here today about how to get the best from yourself, the first line of code is actually an interesting idea that I want you to rewrite your first line of code. What does that mean? What is Jamie talking about? Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. I have a brother named Craig. Craig and I have a mutual friend named Fernando. Fernando True story. God bless you, Fernando, if you're on this thing. I'm not naming last names here. Fernando, at the time this conversation happened a few years ago, had 24 jobs in 25 years. That's a lot of jobs over the course of 25 years. So Craig, my brother, is talking to Fernando. He says, Fernando, why'd you leave the last job you had? Those people were jerks. They were assholes. I don't like them at all. He said, okay, well, what about the job before that? Oh, my God, that company was a mess. It was crazy. Well, what about the job before that? Oh, the commute was way too long. It was just a temporary job. Suddenly, Fernando starts thinking about it, and Craig says, Fernando, you know what the common denominator is in all these jobs, right? And he goes, yeah, it's me. And Craig said, well, you got to think about that. Well, Craig tells me this story. And I found it very fascinating and interesting. And I said, well, what's the outcome of all this? He said, well, I realized, and I told Fernando that his first line of code was broken. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, if you have a software program and it's beautifully written and it's 1 million lines of code and it's amazing and it's a perfect software program, but that very first line of code is broken, the rest of the software won't work, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you hit the reset button. And I went in there and went, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting. He said, yeah, Fernando's first line of code is, it's other people's fault that I keep losing my job. I turned that around and helped Fernando realize, no, your first line of code is broken. It's not other people's fault. It's your fault. And when you change that first line of code, you can actually change your life and change the world around you. So that goes back to, what is your first line of code? And I want you to think about that for a second. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to be thinking about this. I'm not going to ask you to write to mention your first line of code, but I'm going to play a little Jeopardy music here, so that you can go in and just ponder that. I'm going to be quiet for like 15, 20 seconds. What is your first line of code? Is it, I am not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm too old, I'm too young, I had a tough childhood, whatever it is? Think about that for a second, and we'll come back in a few seconds. All right. Oh, good, Kevin. I like Kevin's. I am great. That's his first line of code. Mara, my ADHD. Yes, if you're comfortable writing what your first line of code is in there, then let's talk about that. If you're not comfortable, you don't have to write it in there. Mara, I have ADHD, and we'll talk about that in a second. I'll talk about some ways to manage ADHD. And it did inhibit my success in my youth until I started doing a couple of things. Success is the best revenge. I can do what I need to. These are good. I know I'm very capable, but I'm in my comfort zone. Good. Awesome. I'm misunderstood. Interesting, Angel. Yeah. Pay forward and remain curious. Good. How can I change, improve this? It's good to be me. Well, a lot of people's first line of code is actually good. I mean, I'm grateful for that. A lot of times people have a first line of code that's not good. I like Maureen's Joy is My Birthright. That's awesome. I'm working right now on I Am the Creator of Abundance. It's based on some Joe Dispenza work, a great guy if you ever get a chance to read his stuff. And he talks about the world is not one of scarcity, it's a world of abundance. The universe wants you to have abundance. And so every morning I wake up and I am the creator of abundance, because it puts me in charge of creating the abundance, even though I have to let go of how that abundance happens. But also I do affirmations every morning, which are 15 times I write down what I want to have manifest in my life. This is all based on science. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but when you train your brain to think properly and to think positive thoughts, it's not just positive thinking, by the way. It's actually, we are made up of electromagnetic waves. The whole universe is made up of electromagnetic waves. If you Google what is the definition of a wave, the definition of a wave is something that's connected to other things. A wave is connected to other things. We are made up of electromagnetic waves. We are connected to the world around us. This whole thing we call our body is just a density of those electromagnetic waves, and we think there's borders here. There's not really borders, which is why you have been in a room where somebody walks into it and they lighten up the room. Or the alternative, you've been in a room where somebody walks in and they suck the the energy out of the room. And you're going, oh, that's just a imaginary thing that I'm thinking. No, actually, they are connected to everything in the room, and they're either bringing light to the room or darkness or sadness. We've all gone through sad periods, and that's something that actually really happens. Let's read some of the comments here. I make magic happen. I like that one. What happens if I fall? Have faith in the process. There's a method to the madness. I need to focus on my goals, but I'm also grateful for what I have accomplished thus far. That's great. I'm the product of my ancestors' foundation. Woo-woo. Woo-woo is always true, though. Good. An energy vampire. Oh, good. I like that idea of an energy vampire, somebody that sucks the energy out of the room. The author, Maureen had asked about it, is Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. His best book is Becoming Supernatural. It's pretty dense. It's all based on science, but he basically investigated how do we engage with the world around us and what are our electromagnetic energy that we're putting out in the world. By the way, a little data point I learned just yesterday, the heart has 30 times more, I think it was this, don't quote me on this, 30 times more electromagnetism energy than the brain does. It was something like that. But the reason I mention that is when you focus on your heart, a lot of times that can actually expand your universe. Awesome. Let's keep going on all of this, and we're going to jump back to the slides here. So your first line of code, thank you for participating in that and doing that, because it helped me understand, what's working for you and what's important to you and all of that. And that really helped all of this. So I'm going to keep going because we got a lot of slides we got to get through here. I'll tell a very quick story about me rewiring my code so that you can understand how to do it using a technique called emotional freedom technique. Tapping is what it's called, EFT technique. And basically what it is, and I'll tell this story very quickly because I want to make sure we hit our timeline here. When I was young, I had a mom who struggled a little bit, had some challenges in her life. She was an alcoholic, and so she would sometimes disappear at night, and I'd be in middle school, and I go to my dad, I go, where's mom? Well, she's gone. She's just disappeared. She ran out of the house, very upset about things. She was a wonderful woman in a lot of ways, had a lot of love, but also just had wiring in her brain that just was a little off, and so the result was kind of a tumultuous childhood. Well, I got one morning in middle school, I woke up, she was gone. I went out and had to be picked up on a cold, wet, rainy February morning to go to basketball practice. Now, I am not a good basketball player, so I was already doing something I didn't want to do. But the bottom line is, I'm middle school, my mom is gone, it's cold, wet, rainy, and I go outside and it's dark outside, it's all that stuff. Bad time, right? Fast forward 20 years, and I realized on cold, wet, rainy, dark mornings when I would go out to get the newspaper, I would have these kind of flashbacks, not a flashback, but just sort of a sadness that would overcome me. And I went, oh, this is because of that morning in middle school when I went through all of this, and it was really a bad time. Well, I came across something called emotional freedom technique. It's basically tapping your collarbone in order to help you rewire the neural pathways in your brain. So what I did was I came across it. I went, oh, I'll give this a try. So I would walk out to go get the newspaper. It would be a cold, wet, rainy February morning, January morning, doesn't matter. And I'd feel that feeling. I'd tap my collarbone, and at the time I just said a nonsense word. I said blueberries, 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 and that rewired the neural pathways so that it would just go and go like that and go, oh, we're not going to be thinking about the middle school episode. We're going to be thinking about blueberry. All of a sudden, I stopped having those episodes, and it was all because I tapped my collarbone and rewired my neural pathways. So if any of you are struggling with things that happened to you previously, you can turn those from negatives into positives and have them make you stronger instead of make you weaker by rewiring your neural pathways and reframing how you think about those things. Let's keep going, and I'm going to share the slides some more. So that was a great story from my youth. The science behind the emotional freedom technique, EFT EFT tapping is all here. It's basically done based on research, and you'll be able to do it. Meditation is something else. We had somebody earlier talk about ADHD, a very quick story on that front. I know I'm moving quickly, but I got a lot of slides to get through here. I have ADHD. I struggled with memory and focus in my youth. For those of you who don't have it, when you have ADHD, you don't get the long-term memory benefits that many people get, because your brain is going bing, 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 bing. I won't get into too much detail here, but it's the result, new studies are showing it's the result of lower than normal dopamine. So your brain is looking for new stimuli to bump up that dopamine. And what happens is you never have the ability, or I didn't anyway, to go and embed long-term memories, which made school a struggle for me because I was always bouncing around and I couldn't remember stuff. Well, I get into my mid-30s, I'm running a company, I'm running status meetings, and I'm going bing, 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 and I realized my staff is not following along. My brain thinks, oh, this all makes sense. Their brains are going, dude, you got to settle down here. So I go into a doctor. I said, hey, can you get me on Ritalin to settle my brain down? The doctor said, I can, but you'll be on a medicine the rest of your life, and that's fine if you want to do that. But have you ever tried meditation as a way to manage your ADHD? And I said, well, I do meditate, actually. And they said, well, I want you to do it every morning and every afternoon. And I started doing it in the morning and every afternoon, and my life changed. My brain got settled down. All of those impulses that were in the amygdala went up to the prefrontal cortex. I started settling my brain down and managing it. So ADHD and ADD can be managed through meditation. And let's talk and look at some of the slides on here about meditation. If you want to scan this QR code with your phone, it will take you to a blog post on my website that will talk about how to use meditation. Meditation is very easy to do. There's no mystery to it. It's not a super, woo-woo kind of thing. It's just basically training your brain to settle down, and you can go in and use all of that and do that. So scan that. It'll take you to a blog post that teaches you to meditate. And Mary Sue was recently introduced to TM. I was skeptical, but it does have amazing results. Mary Sue, I started out with transcendental meditation and did that for years and years and years. Now I'm working with an organization called Heartfulness, and Heartfulness seems to go even deeper for me on the meditation front. Let's keep going as we move through all of this, and the slides will give you some information on all of that. Now, here's an interesting perspective on leadership. For years, you've been told that the following traits are the sign of a great leader, somebody who's successful: grit, drive, pride, confidence, boldness. New research shows that there's an unwritten secret that is often overlooked, and that is humility and kindness. When we were humble and kind, we actually have more success than when we walk into a room thinking, I'm smarter than everybody, I'm bolder, all of that sort of stuff. So it's counter to what we've been taught years ago, but the new science is that humility and kindness is one of the key things that you can do. Now, I had a lesson in humility years ago, went up to Tufts University, did a speech up there. I do the speech, I come off the stage, everybody's like, that was amazing. I'm getting all the pats on the back, all the accolades that you want. Everybody thought it was amazing. I'm feeling pretty darn good about myself, which, by the way, is always a risk when you start building yourself up. And I got in the car. They whisked me away from the speech. I get into the hotel, and I'm feeling really prideful about the speech I'd given and that everybody loved it. And I walk through the hotel, and there's this little old woman who walks by me, and she looks at me and she goes, Jamie Turner. And I thought, wow, even the little old person in the hotel knows who I am. I must be a rock star. I am just feeling so good about everything that happened, and I must be really, really good at this speaking thing. Well, I get on the elevator, and as you know, on the elevator, sometimes they have those mirrored doors. The mirrored doors close on the elevator, and I look on my chest and I see that my name tag is sitting there. So the woman who walked by me and went, Jamie Turner, was just reading my stupid name tag. So the bottom line is, it was a lesson to me in stay humble. After all, there's only two kinds of people in the world: those who are humble and those who are about to be. And I learned my lesson on that. Stay humble. It's a better way to move through the world and move through your life. All right, we're going to do a quick quiz and see what we've got going on here in terms of stuff. Type it in the chat feature. Neil deGrasse Tyson says the most important moments in your life are dictated not by what you know, but by how you Go ahead and type it in there. Awesome. Jim, fast with the fingers there. Jim, David, awesome. Everybody's doing a great job. Effective leaders work on their mindset first and their blank second. Mindset first and their blank second. Awesome. Skill set second. Good. Excellent. Last one. I'll read this and then type in both words. When you move towards blank, your world shrinks. When you move towards blank, your world expands. So what are the two words there? Good. Angela, fast with that. When you move towards comfort, your world shrinks. When you move towards discomfort, your world expands. Keep that in mind. All right. We are now moving on to the mentoring side of the equation. We're going to skip over a few slides that take a little bit of time because I'm a little bit behind schedule here. Warren Buffett offered to pay $100,000 instantly to any university graduate for 10% of their future earnings. He then increased it to $150,000 if they agreed to take a course on communication skills. That's how important communication skills are in your life and the lives of the people around you. Any of us who have a partner in our life know that the ability to communicate and clarity of communication and ease of communication is a foundation upon which you build a successful relationship. So that actually plays out in your personal life as well as in your career. Keep that in mind as you go through stuff. And let's talk about a couple of things that will help you in terms of how you communicate with people. If you want to connect deeply with someone, look into their left eye. This is from Dr. Tara Swart, who wrote a book called The Source, and she said, for evolutionary reasons, when we look into people's left eye, we actually connect with them on a deeper level. Her theory is that when parents, when they are holding their babies and feeding them, most parents are right-handed, so they hold the baby in the left arm and pick up the bottle in the right arm and put the bottle in the baby's mouth, and the first eye that they look down at is the baby's left eye, and that embeds in their neural pathways this warmth and this oxytocin that's released as they see somebody looking into their left eye. I have started putting this into practice. It does seem to work. I don't know if it's because I'm looking into their left eye or just that I'm looking more intently into their eyes. But Dr. Tara Swart says that is one thing that you can do. Let's move on to some management skills. What's one of the best ways to connect with someone? We've all had situations where we're not connecting with employees. What's one of the best ways to connect with someone? Is to ask for their help. When you go in and turn to somebody and say, can I get your help on something? They suddenly go, wow, this is a person who actually respects me enough to ask for my help. A fundamental human need is the need to be respected. When we turn to somebody and say, can I get your help on anything? How should I decorate my house? Does this shirt look good? What should I do about this problem I'm having at the office? How can I work better with the CEO? All those things, when you ask people for their help, it helps them feel connected to you, and suddenly you're having a better relationship with them. So all of us have relationships in the office where we're just not quite connecting with somebody. Ask for their help on something. Shoot them an email. Ask them for to help you with anything that you want, and that will help you build that relationship with them as they go through it. Here's another thing. Remember that what surrounds us influences our perception. So what I would like you to do, take a look at this slide, and there's the gray tile at the top and the white tile at the bottom. And what I want you to do is look at that for a second. I want you to close one eye and take your finger and put it horizontally across the two tiles. And what do you notice? I'll bring them back up on the screen here real quickly. Close your eye, put your finger across them horizontally, and what do you notice? You notice that the A tile and the B tile are both neutral gray. This gives us an understanding and drives home a key point. What surrounds us influences our perception. If you're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, Do it in a comfortable surrounding where you're on a sofa or sitting down at a coffee shop where both of you are comfortable, and it makes that difficult conversation that much easier. If the surroundings are fluorescent lighting with linoleum countertops and it's, just sort of harsh, that will make that conversation more harsh. So keep that in mind as you go through all of this stuff and do this. We've got about 5 more minutes. I'm going to go and then turn it back over, and we'll do some rounding things up. If anybody has any other additional questions they might have on some of the stuff. Don't underestimate the power of the words like let's and we. When you use those words, we can make this happen. Let's figure out a way to make this work. All of that is inclusive. And when you drop those little words in there, suddenly you're starting to connect better with the people around you. As I've gotten older, I've realized that little word choices, if you use them like a surgeon and you insert a certain word, the word you is a great word. We, let's, all of those things can actually improve your communication. It's these little tiny improvements that add up over time. No single word is going to be mind-blowing and change everything, but little droplets into the bucket of using the proper words, the proper phraseology, all of that add up to something over time that actually help you connect with others. And Francis said, yes, and. Yes, that's interesting, and we can do it in a different way. That's actually a technique that you can use when you want to disagree with somebody. Yes, that's a good idea, and I've got another idea that we might want to explore. Suddenly that yes and is inclusive instead of saying, no, that's a bad idea, but I've got a better idea. That's the wrong way to do those kinds of things. All right, let's keep going here. As we move through all of this stuff, we're going to move into now the next, which is marketing. How do you market yourself with your personal brand? What are the things that you can do in order to come across better? Here's a thought for you. Under 40, you get paid for what you do. Over 40, you get paid for what you know. Now, that is a general statement, but if you think about it, when you're under 40, you're a doer. You're working with your hands. Hey, we need this done quickly. We need the Excel spreadsheet done, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. When you're over 40, it's, hey, let's think strategically about this and let's figure out where we move forward from here. They're both important. The under 40 and the over 40 work combines to make a great organization. But if you understand that as you grow older in your career, you're turning into a coach and a teacher and a person with wisdom. That can be a hidden secret that you think, oh gosh, I need to work faster or work as fast as the young people. Well, guess what? No, you don't, because you've got all the wisdom that goes on in there. When you are leading a meeting, be clear about what kind of meeting it is. Is it a brainstorming meeting, a planning meeting? Is it setting the course? Over prepare and then relax. That was one of the key ideas that a woman named Maribeth Varner told me once at BKV. I worked for her, and she said her secret was over prepare and then relax. And I was like, that is a great idea. Every so often, pause and do a quick recap, get consensus at that time, and then headline and bookend, which means start out with here's where we're headed, and then talk about what you're going to talk about, and then bookend it with this is what we basically just said. A couple of last slides as we do this, and then I'm going to turn it back over to the team to take it from there. As executives, and we have a lot of executives here, systems tend to move towards complexity. It's our job as leaders to move systems towards simplicity. In physics, there's a law, which is the more energy needed to sustain a system, the less stable it is. As organizations grow and get more complex, it requires more energy to make those organizations sustain themselves. Your job as an executive is to figure out, how do I accomplish the same thing with less intensity, less energy, fewer moving parts, all of that stuff. And if you can do that, then you're going to find your organization is moving much more fluidly and able to respond to the world around it. Last thing, a couple of slides here as we go on, and then again, I'm going to turn it back over. We've had questions and answers as we've gone through stuff, so I feel like we've had a good Q&A, but I will answer any questions that people have. Remember, no surgeon goes into the operating room without practicing first, so practice what we've talked about here when you get home tonight, and work with your spouse or your loved one or members of your family or anybody in your life in order to practice some of the things that we've talked about here. You can catch me on CNN International on Friday night at 6 p.m. I'll also be on Sunday night at 11 p.m. I'll be talking about the Super Bowl commercials. It is CNN International, so you have to have the kind of expanded version of CNN. But I'm going to turn it back over to the team at Emory. Thank you guys for having me in. I always enjoy this. I'm going to be here for questions if anybody has any, and we can check them in the chat feature or in the Q&A session. Heather, I'll turn it back over to you. I think I was supposed to throw it your way. If I wasn't, I apologize, but I think it was you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Wow. I'm going to echo the comments that I've seen quite a bit in the chat. Wow. The note taking that I just did is crazy. And if you all, so many good nuggets of information, what a great, fantastic way to start our day today. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you.
Just quickly, if you all missed it in the chat, this is recorded. This has been recorded, and this will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of the great nuggets, you'll be able to rewatch the video here as we post that. So my name is Heather Dufault. I am part of the open enrollment team here at the Goizueta Business School. And Jamie, again, thank you. And thank all of you for joining us. We love that you choose to spend your morning with us. It's a privilege to have you with us. So thank you. We do hope that you'll join us again. As you can see on the screen, we've got a couple of our Business Over Breakfast series planned for the next two. We've got on February 20th, Adapting Your Leadership Style for a Changing World with Richard Berlin. And then if you're looking ahead to March, as we are, we have Executive Presence with Brandon Smith. So we hope you'll join us for those. And as we close out today, I am just going to reiterate some of our upcoming short courses. Nicola touched on these in the beginning, but if you weren't with us, I'll highlight a few. We do have a new suite of asynchronous digital analytical programs you can see on the screen. Another new course that we're adding is the Business of Coaching. This is strategies to boost your coaching practice. This is whether you're a seasoned coach looking to expand your reach with a refreshed business plan, or you need a new direction and a new business plan, this comprehensive 4-part webinar series is perfect for you. Also coming up in the spring, our 5-day intensive managerial leadership program, our popular executive communication and leadership presence course, and our leveraging AI for business course. And Pam's put up there, thank you. Again, look for an invitation email coming soon on our LinkedIn workshops. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie. Thank you. I can't say enough. We certainly appreciate you joining us today and all the insights that you've shared, and we appreciate you all sharing your morning with us. We certainly hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.